They blocked an old man from his cabin and thought he'd just paddle away quietly. That was their first mistake. See, my grandpa Ernest didn't do loud lawsuits or neighborhood drama. He did permits, precision, and petty construction projects that hit where it hurts. And by the time that HOA fishing club heard the first cement mixer, it was already too late because Ernest didn't come to fight. He came to build revenge. This isn't your usual HOA drama. This one comes with blueprints, binoculars, and a whole lot of petty satisfaction. If you've ever dealt with smug board members who think they run the world, you're going to love how this unfolds. Hit the comments and tell me what's your worst HOA horror story. I bet Grandpa could top it. My grandpa Ernest was the kind of man who fixed a leaky pipe with duct tape and spite. For 15 years he drove to his lakeside cabin every Saturday like clockwork, armed with Folgers coffee, peanut butter crackers, and memories of my grandma Eleanor that lived in every creaky floorboard. That cabin was their heart, their legacy, and the only place he still talked to her out loud without feeling silly. Then along came Lori Haywood, the HOA president, the human version of printer paper, white, expensive, and constantly jammed. One morning, Grandpa rolled up to his usual turnoff and bam. Steel gate, keypad, and a guard who looked like he just got promoted from folding towels at the YMCA. "Sorry, sir, residents only," he said, like Grandpa hadn't been there before Lori even finished her first Botox packet. Grandpa whipped out the deed and easement papers like a cowboy drawing his pistol. "Been using this road since before your sign had a zip code," he said. But rules were rules, and apparently common sense didn't make the cut. That's when Lori strutted up in her white Mercedes, wearing enough synthetic yoga fabric to choke a pelican. She leaned on his truck window with that HOA queen pin smile. "Mr. Wallace, we simply can't allow random access through our community. Safety comes first." "Fine. This is my driveway, not a rave." Now, Grandpa didn't raise his voice, didn't call a lawyer, just stared at her like she was a busted pipe, annoying, fixable, and guaranteed to make noise when pressure built up. She brushed off his legal papers like they were takeout menus, told him he could access his property by boat, and then gave a little wave, like she'd just canceled a dinner reservation. That boat comment? That stuck. Because Eleanor used to say, nothing makes a man more dangerous than grief with time on his hands. So Grandpa took the long way around the lake, 45 minutes of chewing gum-flavored fury, launched his old boat, and floated back to the only piece of land that felt like home. And from across the water he saw them, those smug HOA folks laughing, sipping rosé, hosting their precious Sunrise Fishing Club like they owned Sunrise itself. He didn't say a word, just reached for the binoculars, looked through the lens, and saw a sign so smug it practically had a trust fund. Sunrise Fishing Club. HAO. And that's when everything snapped together like PVC elbows in a pipe trench. This wasn't about safety. This was a hostile lakefront takeover dressed in pastel polos and fake concern. And they picked the wrong man to fence out. By nightfall, Grandpa had Eleanor's old photo in one hand and a blueprint pencil in the other. He didn't yell, he didn't sue, he just started planning. Because when you block a man from his memories, he doesn't give up, he breaks ground. A goat named Miss Not Your Property, a bounce house turf war, and why you don't mess with a man who knows his zoning codes. What's worse, being locked out of your cabin or lectured on community safety by a woman named Lori? Stick around till the end, because the payback isn't just concrete, it's personal. And, funny enough, to make Lori choke on her HOA handbook. Drop your thoughts in the comments, like this story if it made you cheer for Grandpa, and don't forget to subscribe for more twists, petty justice, and legacy done right. They say the pen is mightier than the sword, but nobody warns you about the HOA newsletter and its passive-aggressive font. I'm talking about that curly typeface that says, "We hope you're well," but means, "We're coming for your peace." So imagine my surprise when I open the latest Community Outlook and see a full-page spread titled Legacy Property Concerns. Let's talk about what's holding us back. Spoiler alert, it had a blurry satellite image of my cabin, a red arrow, and a caption that read, "Not part of the vision." I nearly spit my coffee across Eleanor's old porch swing. Lori, queen of Pecan Lake HOA, decided to host a community vote with 7 hand-picked board members, 2 wine coolers, and 0 legal standing. The result? Boat access revoked, dock use suspended, and my property now labeled out of alignment with community elevation goals. Translation? Go float somewhere else, Grandpa. Then came the cherry on the sundae. She left a laminated note on my dock that read, "Consider a floating home alternative, ma'am. You want me to live in a canoe." Now, I've been insulted before. I once got called a budget pirate for using duct tape on my mailbox, but this was a full frontal HOA ambush. So I did what any old pipe engineer with nothing but free time and a fax machine would do. I read all of it. The bylaws, the zoning code, the historic property registries, the environmental use exemptions. I read like I was cramming for a final exam titled, "So You Want to Outlaw the HOA?" Laurie may have had a newsletter, but I had highlighters and 40 years of grudges built like a pressure tank. Turns out, Laurie's shiny little community charter was built on some very shaky soil. Specifically, an overlooked clause from 1963 that says any property with documented water access prior to district incorporation shall retain recreational easement rights in perpetuity. I know legalese, but in plain English, if you used the water legally before the HOA was even a twinkle in its founder's Botoxed forehead, they can't take it from you. Not without a fight, not without paperwork, and especially not without me calling every favor I've got down at the county clerk's office. See? What Laurie didn't realize is I'm not just some widower with a boat and a backache. I'm the guy who used to reroute municipal water lines while city council members argued about lunch. I know how to dig, both literally and legally. And now I had something stronger than her fake ballot vote. I had precedent, documented, notarized, dusty, old feeler kind of precedent. So I gathered it all up, my easement rights, my dated dock permit, my 2007 fishing license with Eleanor's signature on the back, and started filing. Next thing I know, Laurie's new regulation is being reviewed for procedural validity. That's legal for, oops, you missed with the wrong man's weekend. And guess what? The local land use office, they drink at the same diner where I fixed the dishwasher for free in 2014. Karma's got a clipboard too, sweetheart. Turns out she revoked the wrong man's access because I just found a loophole older than her Botox subscription. What would you do if someone suggested you replace your family cabin with a kayak? Don't swim off just yet. Next time we're talking goats in sashes, block party turf wars, and why HOA bylaws don't stand a chance against pie charts made out of manure. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like if Grandpa's legal judo gave you hope, and subscribe before Laurie petitions to remove this channel for being too informative. They thought I'd go away quietly. I showed up with a county-certified permit binder thicker than their ethics. While Karen was busy printing HOA violation flyers in Comic Sans, I was busy highlighting a 1964 water use clause that basically handed me a golden shovel. It read, "Lakefront owners may construct reasonable recreational structures over public water with no interference from future association." I'm guessing reasonable didn't include a 200-foot fishing pier with handrails lighting and a bench that faced directly into their snooty little Champagne Sunrise Club. But hey, it didn't say unreasonable either, so I did what any legally minded widower with a grudge and a discount code for Quikrete would do. I applied. I submitted blueprints so detailed they included fish migration lanes and duck gossip zones. And the county lady, she blinked once, smiled, and said, "Sir, this application is flawless." Laurie Karen Haywood, meanwhile, was busy harassing the zoning board like it was her personal Yelp review hotline. "This structure threatens aquatic harmony," she wrote. "Ma'am," the planner replied, "it's a wooden deck, not a submarine base." A week later, 12 pallets of concrete and 2 semis of pier posts showed up at my dock like Christmas came early for civil engineers. My buddy Doug, the local carpenter with a vendetta against HOA types, rolled in with his crew like it was a barn-raising revival. Karen came screeching down in her white Mercedes, heels sinking into mud, yelling, "This is an illegal structure and I demand immediate cessation." I handed her a cold lemonade and a copy of the county's stamped approval. "Ma'am," I said with a smile, "you're welcome to fish from the public side." She stormed off so hard her yoga pants tried to file for emotional distress, but that's when it got even better. Doug suggested we install a little dedication plaque. "You want to honor Eleanor?" he said. "Or you want to name it the Karen Blocker?" I stood there, sipping my coffee, staring at the blank brass plate like a man choosing between justice and petty joy. That's when I realized I could do both. "Make it double-sided," I said. "One side for Eleanor, one side for poetic karma." By the end of the week, the pier stretched halfway to the HOA dock like a polite middle finger made of timber and regulation-compliant dignity. Karen's fishing club had to move their boats to the other side of the cove, and the grumbling sounded like seagulls choking on caviar. Every time she tried to raise a complaint, she got hit with the same sentence from the county clerk: "All permits are in order." You could practically see the steam rising from her overpriced contour foundation. The next morning, 12 pallets of concrete arrived at my dock, and Karen's fishing club lost their lakefront view. If you were me, would you name the pier after your wife? Or after Karen's worst nightmare? Oh, but it doesn't end at concrete and karma. Next up, Karen tries legal sabotage, forgets about my city inspector buddies, and learns what happens when the fine print bites back. Hit that like button, drop your pier name ideas in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe before the HOA tries to declare sarcasm a violation. Karen called my pier a monstrosity. I corrected her. "Eleanor Memorial Fishing Structure, if you please." She scoffed like I'd just named it the USS Kickrocks. Truth is, she'd tried every trick in the HOA scroll of petty: visual disharmony, shoreline conflict, disruption of aquatic vibes. I swear, if passive aggression were Olympic sport, she'd be podium-bound in a tiara made of bylaws. But a real masterpiece? An emergency aesthetic review. She gathered the HOA board in yoga pants and judgment to vote on whether my pier blended with the community's visual landscape. This from the same crew who installed a life-sized pink flamingo Christmas scene last year that scared local ducks into therapy. I handed the county a photo of that little display next to my sleek wooden pier, and the clerk nearly dislocated her jaw trying not to laugh. "Sir, your structure meets and exceeds the visual cohesion requirements." Boom. So Karen pivoted. She summoned an environmental consultant who turned out to be her nephew, who showed up wearing flip-flops and a tie-dye shirt reading "Save the Fish." He claimed the pier could cause emotional trauma to migratory species. Doug offered him a granola bar and a life vest, just in case the trauma made him faint. Meanwhile, my real consultant, certified and clipboarded, nodded and said, "This design actually improves habitat, game set, and environmentally friendly match." Karen tried to get cute by arguing the pier's presence was a threat to property values. I pulled a printout of recent listings. Turns out, homes with a view of the Eleanor Memorial Fishing Structure had risen 12%. I told her maybe her value was dropping because of the tiki torches and inflatable margarita bar on the HOA beach. "Ma'am, you're welcome to submit your decor for review," I offered. She stormed off, her flip-flops making a sound like justice in reverse. By Friday, the crew had finished the railings, added solar lights, and even bolted down a tribute bench that faced directly toward Karen's beach club. I caught her standing at the edge of her yard, squinting through her binoculars like she was personally offended by my screws being level. "This is a blight upon our community," she shrieked to no one in particular. I nodded and said, "You might need stronger blinds," and just like that, the HOA board began stepping back, physically and emotionally, like maybe they didn't want to go down with Queen Clipboard. By Friday, construction hit the HOA's sightline like a brick through a bay window, and the HOA board had to start squinting to stay mad. Ever seen someone scream community integrity while holding a wine spritzer and a leaf blower? Karen called an emergency board meeting, which is HOA code for gossip in a hot tub. She wore a visor, held a clipboard over a margarita, and declared my pier a terrorist structure with visual intent to disrupt. The ducks nodded politely. I wasn't invited, of course, unless you count the neighbor who accidentally added me to the group chat while live streaming it from his Apple Watch. That night, I got an email stamped urgent. The HOA demanded a surprise inspection. Classic move. They thought I'd panic. Instead, I dusted off the binder, brewed coffee for the inspector, and wore my Permit Me t-shirt. Inspector shows up with a measuring wheel and a skeptical face. Until he saw my concrete, my railing spacing, my solar lights set to turtle-friendly mode, he looked impressed. "Sir, this is the most compliant structure I've seen since 8. I almost offered him a seat on the tribute bench. But then he turned his head left. That's when things got spicy. His eyes locked on Karen's so-called decorative seawall, which had about as much engineering as a child's sandcastle. Then he spotted the private dock, twice the legal length, built without a permit, with electrical wires wrapped like holiday tinsel. I didn't say a word, just sipped my coffee and handed him a flashlight. When he saw the underwater speaker system blaring whale sounds near spawning fish, his clipboard trembled. This is highly irregular. He pulled out a violation book the size of a Sears catalog. Karen burst from her patio like she smelled a fine. "Excuse me, you're supposed to be inspecting his pier." The inspector replied, "Ma'am, I am inspecting everything in my field of vision." Her Botox tried to hide the panic, but even collagen has its limits. The HOA had spent years writing violation letters like it was a love language. Now they were getting one of their own, and it came with daily fines and mandatory retrofits. By Monday, the HOA inbox exploded. Residents who'd been fined for mailbox paint were now finding out their own leadership had built a beach disco with 0 approvals. Karen blamed clerical oversights. One board member resigned mid-email. Another one pretended he thought HOA stood for Home of Apples. The inspector returned to finish his paperwork and asked if I had a copy of Karen's aesthetic complaint. I handed it over. He chuckled and said, "We'll file that under irony." For once, the HOA had to pay fines instead of collecting them, and Karen's eyebrows stopped arching and just gave up. Who do you trust more, government inspectors or HOA beautification committees? But don't scroll away yet, because next up, Karen tries to sneak onto my pier at 2 a.m. with a sledgehammer. Let's just say she met concrete, copper wiring, and a camera system with night vision. Like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy watching villain arcs get canceled by security footage. So there I was, asleep, dreaming of revenge-flavored barbecue sauce, when Alexa said, "Intruder detected, front dock." I rolled over and saw the floodlights click on like a stage production. And whose center spotlight? Karen, in a ski mask, holding a sledgehammer like she was auditioning for Tool Time Felony Edition. Her bestie, Tina, from the HOA Events Committee, a woman who once cried over bunting, was crawling under my railing with bolt cutters and the grace of a raccoon on rollerblades. They were whispering like it made a difference. My security system picked up every step, every grunt, every swear word they mumbled while trying to loosen marine-grade bolts with a wrench from Bed Bath & Beyond. Doug had been sleeping in the guest room, which he called the bunker suite, for exactly this reason. He was halfway into his pants by the time the motion alert hit his phone. He grabbed his flashlight, a pair of zip ties, and the moral high ground, stepped onto the dock like a linebacker on Judgment Day and shouted, "Ma'am, you might want to put that tool down unless you want it to be evidence." Karen spun around like a busted raccoon, crowbar raised, eyes wide like the HOA dues were due. Tina panicked and bolted straight into the bushes, where Doug expertly tackled her into a pile of landscaping bark. Karen tried to flee down the dock, yelling, "You have no right to record me," as if the Constitution starts with "Thou shalt not film HOA presidents after midnight." She made it halfway across the dock before her pink Uggs betrayed her. 1 step, 2 steps, splash, straight into the lake. The sledgehammer went one way, her ego the other. Meanwhile, My camera system caught it all in glorious 4K, night vision, audio, timestamps. Doug walked Karen back up the dock like a soggy toddler, hair dripping, attitude fried. Tina was already zip-tied to a bench, trying to blame it on low blood sugar. Cops arrived 10 minutes later, headlights slicing through the fog like karma's flashlight. Karen tried to lawyer up with, "This was a misunderstanding," but the deputy just pulled out the footage on his tablet and replied, "Ma'am, this is the clearest case of HOA sabotage I've ever seen." They were booked on trespassing, destruction of property, and just plain stupidity. I handed the cops a flash drive labeled HOA Gone Wild, Wet and Wired Edition. They left in zip ties and slippers. I left the footage on a flash drive labeled Hoakley Gone Wild. Ever seen a Karen try to flee justice in wet Ugg boots? You ever see Karma wear a bathrobe and ankle monitor? Because that's exactly what strutted through county court when Karen showed up for her arraignment looking like a dethroned prom queen on laundry day. Front page headline read, HOA president arrested for Pier sabotage while wearing pajamas and a crown. And no, that's not a metaphor. She really wore her Queen of Clean HOA tiara. Probably thought it would score points. It did not. Charges came in fast and heavy. Trespassing, destruction of property, tampering with electrical systems, and HOA fund mismanagement. Yep, turns out Karen had also been dipping into the community pool fund for emergency aesthetics. Translation, she bought scented chlorine and 6 concrete flamingos. The county didn't appreciate her decorating choices, and neither did her husband, who filed for divorce the next morning. His reasoning? Irreconcilable sabotage. While Karen's world shrank down to courtrooms and court-ordered cleanup duty, my Pier was going viral. Literally. Someone uploaded the security footage to TikTok. Peer pressure was trending. Middle schoolers were reenacting the arrest with sock puppets. Local kids started calling the dock the Karen Killer Bridge. My mailbox got fan mail from HOA survivors in 3 states. And the county? They named the pier a public recreational landmark, with a plaque. And yes, it included Eleanor's name, right next to the words, "Built with dignity and zero HOA fund." Meanwhile, Karen's pool, condemned. Turns out installing underwater speakers and disco lighting without permits is a health hazard. Who knew? The health department slapped a big neon orange sticker on her gate, unfit for use, kind of like her leadership. Her pool boys quit, her hot tub leaked into her wine cellar, and her prized dolphin floaty popped mid-inspection. Then came the final blow. The entire HOA board resigned, all of them. Turns out nobody wanted to go down with the SS, Karen. Especially not after those forensic accountants showed up sniffing around the petunias and patriarchy gala expenses. I swear one board member literally said, "I was just here for the snacks." Poor guy looked like he'd been held hostage by potlucks and fear for years. Karen, once the queen of bylaws and beige siding, now spends Tuesday afternoons scraping gum off picnic tables as part of her community service. Meanwhile, I sip iced tea on my pier, watching her try to avoid eye contact with ducks who remember the old days. If Karma had a soundtrack, it'd be the sound of her plastic grabber tool missing every single gum wad. Her HOA throne turned into a folding chair at community service, and mine turned into a front-row seat to sweet, legal revenge. What would you rename the HOA newsletter after this mess? I'm thinking the weekly regret. They said I was too old, too broke, too irrelevant. Funny how none of that matters when your name's on the pier and your enemy's out here cleaning graffiti off parking signs like she's running for Miss Mop Bucket 2025. Meanwhile, I got folks waiting in line just to take a selfie next to Eleanor's plaque. And no, we didn't charge admission, but I probably could have. We wrapped the build 2 weeks ahead of schedule, under budget, and with enough leftover scrap wood to build Karen a humility bench. If only she could sit still long enough. Doug installed a little metal sign under the rail that read, "Property of nobody's HOA," just for flavor. Turns out, nothing motivates a community like watching a tyrant fall in Crocs and cuffs. People donated, volunteered, painted, brought sandwiches. I even caught one of the former board members planting flowers at the pier entrance like he was making amends to Mother Nature herself. Word spread fast. First it was the lake people, then came folks from other neighborhoods, tourists even. The fishing club changed their meetup name to the Redemption Reelers. A group of high schoolers started a podcast on how to spot HOA abuse, using Karen as case study one. And one morning, while I was polishing the memorial plaque with my shirt sleeve, guess who showed up? Peter. Yes, that Peter, Karen's ex, looking about as apologetic as a labradoodle who knocked over a wedding cake. "Mr. Wallace," he said, all formal and stiff, "I want to personally apologize for everything my former spouse put you through. This pier, it's something special. Eleanor would be proud." I didn't say much, just nodded and handed him a fishing rod, let the man feel peace for once. He hooked a trout in 5 minutes. That lake's got a wicked sense of humor. The day we unveiled the plaque was one of those moments you bottle up and replay on tough days. It read, "Eleanor Wallace, love built this, paved the way, may this pier remind us that real power is quiet, steady, and full of purpose." Not gonna lie, Doug cried, then blamed it on sawdust. The crowd clapped, the mayor gave a weirdly long speech, and someone brought cupcakes with little gavel toppers on them. A kid asked if Eleanor was a superhero. I told him she was better. She was someone who fought quietly and loved loudly. That Pier, it ain't revenge. It's resolution in cedar and steel. Property values climbed, local businesses boomed. Karen, still on probation. Still banned from HOA involvement. Still yelling at ducks like they vote. And me, I'm on the pier most mornings, coffee in one hand, legacy in the other. I didn't need a courtroom win or a public apology. I got something way better. I got peace. And not the shut up and move along kind. The real kind. The kind that comes when the truth holds, the good guys build, and the loudest person in the room finally gets drowned out by laughter and lake wind. I didn't bury them in lawsuits. I buried them in public respect and 200 feet of peaceful defiance. Justice doesn't always come with a gavel. It sometimes comes with rebar, paperwork, and quiet grit. So the next time someone says, you can't, just smile and ask, where's the nearest concrete supplier? Because, trust me, you don't need a badge to serve truth. Just a backbone, a binder, and a neighbor who knows how to operate a backhoe in second gear. See, Karen thought power lived in the fine print, but she forgot about the bold print, the kind that shows up in permanent ink on county filings and retirement savings used for concrete mixers. Her HOA kingdom was built on ego and expired permits. Mine? On memory, legacy, and just enough spite to make it motivational. And let's be honest, isn't there something beautiful about watching arrogance fold like a lawn chair in a windstorm? When Karen's no trespassing sign blew straight into the lake and ended up nailed to the side of the new pier as art, I didn't even crack a smile, publicly. But behind the scenes, I was doing victory laps around the emotional high ground, because revenge is sweet, sure, but legacy? That's honey-dipped in generational satisfaction. If this story gave you a laugh, a lesson, or just a little satisfaction, hit like, drop your own HOA horror story in the comments, and subscribe for more petty justice done legally and with flair. Because around here, revenge isn't loud. It's laminated, notarized, and poured in cement. Think the pier story was wild? Wait until you hear about the time my neighbor's decorative koi pond turned out to be a covert drainage scheme that backfired during a chili cook-off. Coming soon, bring crackers.